So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our weekly interdisciplinary research seminar. So today's seminar is being organized by the Peace and Diplomacy Research Institute, and we have the pleasure of inviting Dr. Srimal Fernando for today's presentation titled Convergence and Contextualization of Indian Foreign Policy with the Indian Ocean region, with the Indian Ocean Islands. So Dr. Srimal Fernando is the head of the Department of Tourism and Cultural Heritage at the University of Seychelles. He received his PhD in International Affairs. He was the recipient of the prestigious O.P. Jindal Doctoral Fellowship and South Asian University Scholarship under the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation umbrella. Dr. Fernando's research has been published in major peer-reviewed scholarly journals. He focuses on comparative political and socioeconomic policies of small island developing states as a senior lecturer. Dr. Fernando has also been on international television channels presenting insightful commentary for more than 50 live broadcasts, as well as in-depth analysis of significant events and developments. He has also won awards such as the 2018-2019 Best Journalist of the Year, GCA, Media Award for 2016, and the Indian Council of World Affairs, ICWA. Dr. Fernando is also the author of Politics, Economics, and Connectivity in Search of the South Asian Union. So without further ado, I will invite Dr. Fernando for his presentation. And following that, we will open the floor for any questions. Thank you. Dr. Fernando, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First, welcome and good afternoon, everyone. I just want to show a small film about India-Pakistan partition. So I think I don't want to touch. Just a small short film about India.
It sets up the future of India. I've been asked to present to you. Not bad. You know something already. I bring you a very specific task. I am to be the last Viceroy of India, and I shall carry out the role with great pride.
You're bringing the future.
We are.
And let's not make a mess.
This is a new recruit, Jindal. One back inside is a growing man. Now he's going to train you here. But if we do this tomorrow and watch. You dance with your own kind. Have some experiment. What are your orders here? To bring independence to India as smoothly as is possible. 300 million Indians seats want to unite India, but many have 100 million. Those Indians do what? They actually asked to form the first government.
But we need more work.
Sometimes surgery considered integration. It's a bloody axe killing went through people's lives.
They came to give India back her freedom. What is
Each one of you must choose which country will have no allegiance, India or Pakistan. We know no other separate country, India or Pakistan. We are brothers with one soul. Unite us all to Jesus Christ, whose against the will of God. Never about me, I shall always speak for me or my views. Have you spoken yet to you and sitting on a train for Pakistan. New nations ready, born in peace. This is what you wouldn't much. Why no one tell me blood is on your hands for this? I'm thinking, it's your name on the planet. You've always been there as a non-patent.
You can put the PowerPoint. Oh, I can just, yeah. Sorry. Hello, good afternoon. And yes, we call it Mere Des, Mere Jeevan. That means my country, my life, okay? So we talked, we are, you know, when it comes to India, this corner around this side is called Hindustan, right? With Hindustan, only Hindustan begins, right? And you know about Hindus. Hindus are the majority country in this country, and it started with the river Indus, right? Known as Hindustan. And it's always written in all scriptures about Bharat as a country which is associated with the subcontinent. Right? And also today we will be speaking about certain islands, about Maldives, Seychelles, Mauritius, and all. It's going down to Sri Lanka, right? So it's a very interesting nation when it comes to Indian subcontinent, which had a colonial history and independent past, with Jawaharlal Nehru becoming the first prime minister, and the father of the nation is called Mahatma Gandhi, right? Once he said, Hind Swaraj, or Indian Home Rule. I'm just a little bit going beyond independence for you all to enter into the Indian foreign policy dynamics. So Mahatma Gandhi ji penned down a book called Hind Swaraj, Indian Home Rule, where Puran Swaraj, or complete independence, was declared in 1929 in the Lahore session. With that independence come, I'm summarizing the matter. The new nation had a Hindu part as well as a Muslim part, where Ali Jinnah became the Muslim governor and the president of Pakistan, and the first prime minister of India was Jawaharlal Nehru. The country has a rich history, a civilization, and it had 530 odd princely states, which is called the Maharajas, the Maharaja states. So when the independence was going on, there was a surgical strike, like surgical dissection near what you call near Punjab, the state of Punjab, where the Hindu part went towards India and the Muslim part went towards Pakistan, and the Hindus had to go to the Pakistan side. So a new foreign policy dynamics also started to begin with this creation. So the Muslim part of the Pakistan was more towards pro-West, and the Indian part became pro-Soviet. But India has had its blessings with Commonwealth coming into the picture, okay? So when the country was formed, there was something called strategic autonomy, okay, with the rich history, more dominance to the Hindus, and fostering global partnership and strategic alliance with certain non-aligned countries. The first Prime Minister declared this country as more neutral, more non-aligned, not taking sides of the Cold War, not taking the American side or not taking the Russian side, but more neutral, more global South. Neutrality in this appearance. So this is how the Indian foreign policy commenced as a nation. It had about 300 million people at that time, and East Pakistan as well as West Pakistan. The East Pakistan is now called Bangladesh, and the West Pakistan is current Pakistan. So the first Prime Minister who ruled the nation, the modern father of the nation, is Jawaharlal Nehru. During his tenure, the country grew at about 3.5% GDP growth, and it was a part of the Commonwealth, and it was part of also the non-alignment movement, which later on expanded into several phases where even island leaders like Srimal Fernando, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, who took a prominence in 70s when this non-alignment movement came into a phase. During Nehru's period, now these are some of the prime ministers. I just want to give an overview, starting from Nehru, and the current prime minister is Narendra Modi. And these are some of the significant leaders like Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Manmohan Singh, and Mrs. Indira Gandhi, who did certain changes in the country's economics, as well as multilateral approach, as well as foreign policy approach, and reshaping the country's future in years to come. But when Jawaharlal Nehru was the prime minister, a sudden misdeed happened. I mean, there was a Sino-Indo war in 1962, where India's progress had to stop because at that point it was a republic. In 1952, India reached a stage of republic stage, and a new constitution was formed. But this Indo-China war stalled the whole progress, and a transition prime minister called Lal Bahadur Shastri was appointed with the passing away of Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. During his time, he said something very significant. Jai Jawan and Jai Kisan, that meaning hail the soldier, hail the farmer. And in that period, only the agricultural revolution started to happen in India, taking on a different trajectory during Lal Bahadur Shastri's tenure as a prime minister. But he too, they say he was assassinated, and some say he had a heart attack in Russia. So another transition period happened in India in this time. So the next appointee was to be Mrs. Indira Gandhi, the daughter of Jawaharlal Nehru, and she was the one who came into power from 1966 to 1977, and during this time, India started to progress as well as reach to different nations one is the Western, with the Western Hemisphere as well as the Soviet. But more Soviet era approach was seen during Mrs. Indira Gandhi's time. So during Mrs. Indira Gandhi's time, one significant thing that happened in India was liberating the Bangladesh nation, where East Pakistan was broken from the West Pakistan, and now India's foreign policy was reaching more onto the Western side rather than the Eastern part. And terrorism was coming up in India, and their foreign policy had to be also reshaped with this new leadership coming into the picture. So during her time, assertive diplomacy, decisive military action, and strengthening ties with especially Soviet era countries, as well as global restructuring happened, and the SAARC cooperation community was starting to reshape during Mrs. Gandhi's time, and well as Bangladesh Mujibur Rahman's period. So the eight countries in the SAARC region, which was having about a billion people, were taking shape, and the foreign policy of a region plus India taking center of it was dominating the world in regional politics for the first time. It was China that was dominating before that, and United States and the European Union in 1950s. But during Indira Gandhi's time, this was the happening thing that was transforming India into a superpower gradually. With the assassination of Indira Gandhi by the Sikh militants, his son Rajiv Gandhi had to suddenly take over the reins of India, and he was transforming the nation in several spheres. One is technological embrace, where you could see manufacturing units like Suzuki, Hyundai was coming into the picture, and the nation was becoming a $1 billion economy, which was pushing towards a $1 trillion economy in the latter parts in the 90s. With Rajiv Gandhi's policy transformation. He also started to build free trade agreements, multilateral engagements, and policy reforms within the country to transform this 28-state nation into a powerhouse on agriculture, and as well as a technological kind of a mini technological industrial country, having agreements with East Asia, because East Asia was at that time booming as a region, and many countries needed to have multilateral engagements on this matter to send their exports to those countries. And if you want to be a manufacturing hub from an agricultural country, you need technological plus regional empowerment methodologies to transform this foreign policy dynamics in a different way. Unfortunately, Rajiv Gandhi got assassinated by the LTT, the Tamil Tigers of Sri Lanka, and P.V. Narasimha Rao, a more liberal economist who was his finance minister, had to take over, and he kind of shifted the economy into a more economic diplomacy method compared to more forceful military methods, which was adopted by the previous leaders, like Mrs. Indira Gandhi and Nehru, they were move on to military and security method, but these leaders now slowly started to transform this country into a economic direction. Also, when you have economic direction, you need foreign policy doctrines to come into the picture. So before Atal Bihari Vajpayee came, there were few leaders who were there. One was Gujral, who was a foreign minister for a couple of years. He adopted something called the Gujral doctrine, where you favor the neighbor, you don't aggravate the neighbor, and you build solid friendships with the neighborhood. So Gujral stayed for a very short time, but then came Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who came from a political party for the first time, non-Congress party, a party called Bharatiya Janata Party, and he adopted also Indo-US policy plus neighborhood policy, where the neighbors were feeling very comfortable during Atal Bihari Vajpayee's time. He came from 2 seats, and later on he won 80 seats, and that was the party that came into power, and even today that is the party that is ruling. You can see with Narendra Modi and all these politicians running the country. One thing Atal Bihari Vajpayee said in a SAARC conference: we can change our friends, but not our neighbors. That is true by fact. I mean, this was during his Lahore peace missions to Pakistan. He was trying to promote the peace initiative with the neighbor whom they were fighting 3 wars, right? And one of the significant achievements was the nuclear deal. And he had this after Indira Gandhi, it was during Atal Bihari Vajpayee's time that there was a nuclear test during the country, but not more than that. So the next leader that transformed the Indian economy as well as foreign policy was the Congress leader Manmohan Singh, and his rise of economic diplomacy, his special trade negotiations, economic reforms, attracting investments, transformed such a lot. Today, the Indian economy is a $5 trillion economy, which is transforming in the next 10 years to a $3 trillion economy, which is going to be one of the world's third most powerful nation in few more years. Manmohan Singh's trade reforms brought a lot of foreign direct investments, even from Mauritius. More than $30 billion of Mauritian investments were brought to India during Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's time. So the final leader who has come 3 times as a Prime Minister is Narendra Modi. He came in 2014. Under him, there were significant foreign policy doctrines. One was the neighborhood first policy. The other was the SAARC policy, which caters to Mauritius, Seychelles, the western part of the Indian Ocean. The other eastern part and all other parts were taken care by the the neighborhood first policy. And also there is Act East Asia foreign policy and Africa Connect policy, and connecting Europe and America first policy are significant policy doctrines that were adopted under Narendra Modi. Also, during Narendra Modi's time, he specifically catered to the diaspora, the 30 million 30 million Indian diaspora, where 4 million Indians live in United States, and the rest of them stay in Europe. And balancing act, especially during the Europe-Russia war was a key point where India played a neutral stance. And today, America even is trying to balance the act with India. And the third term of Narendra Modi will see more significant progress on economic development and security power in the Indian Ocean, garnering strength. So India is also in the SAARC, in SCO, the BRICS, as well as G20. Last year, the G20 session was held in India. Economic cooperation, when it comes to economic cooperation, now India is a heavyweight. When it comes to India, the $5 trillion economy is moving towards the world's third largest economy in just 5 to 6 years. So with these movements, diplomatic engagements for small nations is important, and its primacy, and also by 2047, India is going to be a developed nation. So the surrounding nations will also be developed nations, like Sri Lanka, Maldives. They will reach to certain heights, because this is the same thing that happened when China boomed. The nearby countries like Singapore, Taiwan, all those countries had the spillover effects. The same spillover effects will happen in the next five years. So this is the conclusion. I will now just go first on the introduction to Indian Ocean Islands foreign policy. Okay, so this is our little islands: Seychelles, Sri Lanka, Mauritius, and Maldives. So this is how things are happening in this part. Some years back, this was not the case. We were poor nations or middle-income nations, dominated by India and large nations like United States, but it's not the case at this point. Economic engagement has also new players like China coming into these waters. Into Sri Lanka, there has been $14 billion investments, and also to Maldives, more than $5 billion investments. And you can see even Mauritius and Seychelles is being influenced by these bigger nations. But India's role is very different. There is a cultural one. There is a, it's not just investments. Our heritage culture goes beyond 2 millennia. And it has Hinduism, influence of Hinduism, Buddhism. And with all these bonds, and also a strong diaspora in these 5 islands, is showing the SAARC policy becoming strong with India. Mainly the neighborhood first policy of India caters to the 8 nations. Only Sri Lanka and Maldives is connected, but the rest of these, like Afghanistan, Bangladesh, all are more on the subcontinent part. But when it comes to SAARC policy, it caters to the ocean, and India has now got its Vikrant aircraft carrier with more frigates. So the defense policy is more strong, but also India has been helping debt trap countries like Sri Lanka, Maldives to get out of this problem and come out of this and once again go on the development trajectory. And India is now giving a lot of preference to these small island countries, huge investments. Very recently, India gave $4 billion to Sri Lanka, another $1 billion to Maldives. And also, when it comes to Mauritius and India, there are more investments from Mauritius to India than Indians having investments in Mauritius. And also the bilateral trade between Sri Lanka and India is $5.5 billion. And also when it comes to the largest number of tourists coming from India and China, it's from India. Indian tourists are coming. 1.6 billion coming to Sri Lanka, and another 1.2 greater part is Europe into Maldives, but it's India. So, you know, with India reaching out from a 5 trillion economy to a 3 trillion economy, what do you think? These 5 islands, how it will take shape? There will be a greater role. And even when this time, when the swearing-in ceremony happened in India, the Prime Minister of India invited the President of Sri Lanka, the 5 island leaders from these countries, Mauritius, Seychelles, Maldives, but he didn't invite the others. So the world attention, the global, I mean, there were other leaders invited, but there was a lot of attention. So there's a lot of focus. Bharat is giving, Bharat means India. Bharat is giving a lot of attention to the small islands. So these are the Singapore or Taiwan or Thailand in the next 10 years, whether others like it or not. So there are military presence of India, environmental, aid presence, maritime routes, and also cultural heritage, and that's how things are happening. But anyway, China, United States, the global players, Europe, India is going to be there, and I think I should end the story. If you have questions, you can ask.
Thank you, Dr. Fernando, for your very insightful presentation. And we open the floor should anyone have any questions, clarifications, or comments.
Yeah. Yes, sir. So.
Thank you, Dr. Fernando, for the insightful presentation. I don't have any questions, but I have a little more context to add to certain points that would be helpful for the benefit of the audience. Actually, the first point that comes in, like Dr. Fernando explained, which was the partition and how its effect happened on the Indian foreign policy. But just to, maybe it's an introduction for some people, so it might have sounded a little more simplified. But there is much more complexity to it in terms of religion, because India, the partition was not purely on the basis of religion two-way. It was more of a one-way thing, because India constituted itself into a sovereign socialist secular democratic republic, and the theocratics, the theocracy angle isn't there. Right. It is not Hindus versus Muslims, but just for the simplification, I understand.
That's great.
That's a complexity that should be taken into account.
Great.
Second was in the times of strategic autonomy and foreign relations. I think Dr. Fernando was correct how we lean towards the Soviet Union for some time, but you can't really simplify that too, because our green revolution and agricultural development were from the US at the same time when we were developing militarily through the Soviet Union, but our economic situation was definitely held out by the United States. However, still in the UN we were being held, or we were left-leaning rather than center-left leaning rather than right. So I think that was also shared well with Dr. Fernando. Just one clarification, like you pointed out correctly, that during Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee's reign, the tenure of him as Prime Minister, the nuclear deal dialogue went on during his Prime Ministership, but the agreement was signed by Dr. Manmohan Singh. So it was actually the 123 agreement, which is between US and India. It was in the next Prime Ministership under Dr. Manmohan Singh. And just another context that you talked about the diaspora, how 4 million of us are in the United States and the European Union, but it is also important to know that most of our diaspora is in the Gulf in the form of laborers and workers who work on like work permits. Even in Seychelles, we have a lot of worker permits. So just to have that in mind. And one very small thing that the interesting part, how Dr. Fernando said that most investment from India to Seychelles, it's less than how much Mauritius investment is back in India. That is also because of a lot of holding and shell companies, as you may be knowing already, and a lot of offshore companies that sort of reroute their investment back to India. So not necessarily is there constructive investment coming through that way. It's like Indian companies rerouting their investment somehow. But yeah, as part of the run-through of the presentation, I thank you.
No, that's great. Yeah, you corrected. That's great.
That's just a little more context.
Good afternoon, the Venus University of Seychelles.
Yes.
I'm looking at the very big picture. In your presentation, you didn't focus a lot on China, but looking at the strategic geographical position of the Indian Ocean, how are you looking at the way forward in the next 25 years ahead? India's role when there's a very big contest with China to control the Indian Ocean, because we are the center of all the trade routes and military positions. So when recently we saw the election in Maldives, where there was a shift from being going from more from towards India instead of the previous government supporting China. What's your views?
Yes, let me break it into a few parts. When it comes to India and its way, the way forward, definitely in the next 10 to 15 years, it will be more inclined, these small islands will be more inclined towards India. It's natural. Of course, China, United States, and other major powers like European Union, they will always be a part in this expansion of financial assets role. They will be there. But as closest neighbors like India, these nations will have to follow a more favorable tone with the Indian subcontinent, because it's only 4 to 5 hours from these countries. If you take from Sri Lanka, it's just half an hour. If you take from India, it's 1 hour. If you take from Seychelles, not more than 3 hours to 2 hours. So security-wise, the advantage is there. Economic-wise, or even if there's a disaster or anything, a favorable trajectory with India will be better. And of course, you have to keep a balance act with all other nations, friendly nations, traditional nations also. Yeah.
We have a
It's a doctor.
question from Professor
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yes.
Can you hear me okay there?
I can hear you.
Yeah. Listening to what you've been saying, I get a very strong feeling of what I best can call extremely strong nationalistic movement going on in India at the moment, and I get slightly disturbed by some of your phrasing, such as whether you like it or not, and also you're taking for granted that the Seychelles, for example, will move closer to India again, whether you like it or not. I think I'd like to hear your comments about the status of Seychelles as a non-aligned nation, not historically been very, very careful not to get involved in big geopolitical battles between the Soviet Union, the Americas, China, and India, and so on and so forth. I think I'd like to hear your comments about that, because I think that's a very important part of the Seychelles identity. It may not be of India's, but certainly of Seychelles.
When it comes to Seychelles as a small nation, it has its own sovereignty and own diplomatic position as a small nation, and it they play this non-aligned policy, right? So when it comes to India, like you mentioned something about Soviet era, then certain other things, that is in the Cold War period. But at this period, when a new government has been formed, it's peaceful, what I see. And there was a swearing-in ceremony where large numbers of dignitaries came from even the nearby countries, even from Seychelles and other countries. So yes, and as a democracy, one of the largest democracies, you can see the opposition has garnered a lot of seats, as well as the current government is maintaining its majority balance in the parliament, and they have formed for the third term. They have the new prime minister has once again come into power. So I think that's the answer I can give to this.
Yeah, but I'm not disputing the processes of democracy in India. I was rather questioning and was interested in India's ambitions as a world power. And yes, I was referring back to Soviet Union time, but now, and you just mentioned, for example, now that India is joining the BRIC countries, that's a clear stance. It's a sort of thing that Seychelles does not want to get involved with.
1.3 billion people, and as well as it is a 5 trillion economy moving towards a 3 trillion economy.
Yes,
so when such a nation is moving, it will have its own power within the other big traditional and friendly powers. So
and I was not questioning. And I was not questioning the policies of India, but rather your, how should I put it, your almost suggestions that Seychelles had no choice but to get closer to India and align itself with India, because I wanted to hear your views on the role of Seychelles as a non-aligned country. Rather than being part of what you mentioned, that Sri Lanka and all of these countries, whether they like it or not, will have to move closer to India. And I don't think that is a given in the Seychelles, given its history and its non-aligned policies. And I'd just like to hear your views about that, not about Indian politics, but Seychelles' relationship with India and Seychelles retaining its non-aligned status when India is moving clearly towards various different alliances.
So Seychelles is having its own sovereignty and its own direction. It's clear in the United Nations and everywhere. It's a very prominent nation. Doesn't take sides like that. It's highly respected in that sense. So I think it's well balancing its act and its sovereignty. Yeah, compared to even the other islands. compared to the other islands that I mentioned, which has been kind of influenced by certain major powers, traditional powers, but not Seychelles. Yeah, that I feel that it has that neutrality, or its unwavering, unbiased stance in that sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Oh, yes.
Dr. Fernando, thank you for that presentation. That was very interesting. An observation and a question. We've all witnessed the recent election in India. And that's quite something, isn't it? When India has an election, it's quite amazing the scale of it. It takes weeks, there are many candidates and so on. And it's obviously a tremendous achievement. It's really a sign of democracy working in the most difficult conditions. So,
Yeah.
well done. The question that comes out of that, of course, is that this is Narendra Modi's third term of office. This time he has to form a coalition. I know this is not set in, well, I know it's not agreed yet, but what is your feeling about the coalition? Will it drive Mr. Modi in a particular direction? Can we expect changes in Indian policy?
Okay. The BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party, had won 240 seats. Normally, to achieve the majority mark, you have to have 270. Okay? That's 30. There's a gap of 30. So to fill that 30 number of gap, two alliance partners from Andhra Pradesh called Telugu Desam Party, plus from Bihar, another party called Janata Dal, which had about 16, if I'm wrong, you can correct me, joined, and they have now reached more than 272 mark. But the point here is the opposition bloc called India bloc is also having a similar kind of a gap. But the Congress party is having, I hope you know, the Congress party is having 99 seats. The two largest parties are BJP, Congress. Congress is having 99. BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party, is having 240 seats. Okay. But to the India alliance, there are smaller alliances like Tirumala Congress, 20 odd seats, and a lot of Shiva Sena, a lot of parties have joined, but can they, even if they break that 30 seats from the ruling party, can they form a stable government? No. So in this logic, the most favorable party that can run in the next 1 to 2 years or 5 years without any hindrance is Bharatiya Janata Party. That brings not only stability to the country, to the region, to the world, otherwise another country will be shaken. So the most senior, most experienced leader is Narendra Modi. That's it.
We wait with interest.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Doctor, for this very interesting, very insightful presentation. You mentioned about India and the Indian Ocean Islands. And obviously there are different levels of relationship between India and the Indian Ocean Islands based on a number of factors. You take Mauritius, with population. Now, from the time of the 78, 80, 85% of population that have come, started with the indentured laborers back in the 18th century until now. So the majority of the population of India, of Mauritius, comes from India. So there's a direct link. And there are populations that have come in a more latter time. So it's been quite a long stretch of immigration as well. So you can actually see the closeness of the population. It's a different setup as well in Seychelles, because in Seychelles, we have, as much as we have a very large Indian, we have a specific Indian diaspora, but within the wider Seychelles population, we also have Indian heritage. Although it is in a different sense in India, it is not so much in the cultural sense, it's possibly more the genetic sense. So there's differences on the population side. Now, when it comes to the attitudes towards the superpowers, I do believe that, so what I'm going by is actually more sort of a shared collective knowledge. What Seychelles has lived through in its short history, especially since independence, in terms of superpower presence in Seychelles. I'll give you an example. During the time of the Cold War in Seychelles, the two main superpowers at the time, in the time of the Cold War, you could see the Soviet Union and the US in a very obvious way, finding out the Cold War, and in a very small population, at the time the population was around 55,000, I'm talking about in the 1970s and 80s here in Seychelles, a very small population. The power play dynamics were enough to explore the few novels about what's going on in this country, where people would have, there would be functions and embassies and spies would be spying on spies and other spies. It was just like a James Bond movie. Okay, my earlier years were one of where you could actually hear what was going on. And seriously, there have been novels written about Seychelles. So Seychelles people were growing up now, talking about 2 generations now, in a time where superpowers were literally fighting in front of you. I don't think it's ever been, it's very small, microscopic society where you can actually see a very large power play unfold here. I don't know if other people who remember the power play and everybody knew that, we have a strategic position in the Indian Ocean, and that obviously we are being courted, we are being fought about over, and at the same time, was Diego Garcia and the whole chain of misery that has ended now as well, and Britain as well, the whole reality. So we are aware that we are small, and that we are courted, and that we are, there's a lot of polemic that goes on this side. So therefore, as well, I think the different islands of the Indian Ocean have different histories with the superpowers. And suddenly Seychelles has history where people have actually physically lived by over a few generations. And now, we're sort of a bit more out of it, more distant. However, let us not forget that so many years ago, we had a number of people walking around in town with signboards saying, no, we do not want to give, island, to India for the military, what was called the military base at the time. So it's not quite gone, there's in the general population, and I can't speak for all 100 and something thousand people in Seychelles, but I can say that we have lived so much, physically lived through superpower power plays that it might be more delicate than other states in the Indian Ocean with very different experiences. Again, this is just a very anecdotal, personal opinion, and I don't come with more than that, but others are welcome to add their anything else to this. So thank you for listening.
Okay, you took me through certain episodes from the time of I think the French, the British, they came. After that, the superpowers entering and the independence movement, as well as what is your future being a small nation in this big world, kind of Indian Ocean, small country. That's what you meant. I think you're like, it's like giving the kind of race to the Indian Ocean, right? Like being a small country.
They also have a physical presence. Sorry, this is the physical presence. I also remember the time, a long time ago, I was mentioning I was on foreign affairs, where Japan came to us because we had a vote at the time of scheme.
Yeah. Similar things have happened to. Yeah. It's not only to Seychelles, it has happened to Maldives, it has happened to small countries like Sri Lanka and all. They have all gone through all this same episode, but you're still in a different time frame connecting the multilateral connections into your foreign policy. So definitely with India giving a lot of focus towards these islands, you can see earlier they used to give the focus to the 8 countries above. Now please, I'm not saying that they are not giving preference, but this is just to explain on this logic, right? Yeah, so their focus is on the islands because you're gaining from one side UN seats. UN has 180 seats. 52 small island countries represent the United Nations. This country is a very powerful country. Seychelles, soft power. It can be in the top UN human rights body. It can be in a lot of fora, human rights, economic fora. So, 4 votes from other islands with India makes Seychelles so powerful. It can dominate even in the UN Security Council. Maldives was the president a few years back. Ahmed was the president in the UN Council. So Seychelles is one of that. That's how I am seeing it. So yeah, you don't need superpowers, or you might need superpowers. You're a country with a balancing act. Yeah.
Sorry, just last thing as well. Sorry, I keep coming back. As I think, the reason I said that Seychelles would have had a different experience in some of the other islands, neighboring islands, is because we had a tracking station. We had a US base here in Seychelles, and that was a very strategic.
Diego Garcia is few kilometers from here.
Yes, but
yeah, so it's also nothing, not even a country.
But they did not have a coexisting population as well. Like
yeah, but Seychelles is powerful.
The demographic shift to allow the base to come in with the IoT region. We didn't have that. We coexisted within the framework of having a tracking station here and a very, very active embassy, US embassy.
In 10 years' time, Seychelles can be such a powerful nation diplomatically. I am not saying economically, diplomatically. Yeah, powerful negotiator with many.
That's good.
Yeah.
And this is why, as you said, the country gives great importance to its sovereignty. You know, we know what's there to lose, I guess. I cannot speak again on behalf of the country, but you will find that you're probably more cautious on the side of Seychelles than maybe other talented.
Thank you.
Not speaking as a politician. Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, please.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for your presentation. Over the years, we noticed that there was a persistent conflict between India and Pakistan over Kashmir. What roles did the leaders in India, including the present one, play in addressing that conflict?
Okay. The modern India has passed through 75 years. The current Prime Minister, when he came, Narendra Modi, he took the Article 370. So the special powers that was for Kashmir, where Indian security forces couldn't have operations in that particular area, was taken out by the current Prime Minister. That's the difference between the current Prime Minister's tenure and the rest, number one. And yes, Kashmir, when at the time of independence, I can't remember his name, the Maharaja at that time, you correct me, right? So he joined the Indian state of Indian side of the demarcation, right? So, and there's another part of it in the Pakistan side, and there's another part which was captured in 1962 or something, the top part by the Chinese. So this Kashmir is the lifeline of all these countries when it comes to water. So it's a very important area. Glaciers are there, so many. So it's divided into three parts. So it will be always the area of confrontation, sensitivity, whether Prime Minister Narendra Modi stays or in a future leader, they will also face the same challenges in the years to come. So that's Earth security dynamics. Yeah. So.
Thank you, Dr. Fernando. Really interesting. I'm listening to some of the questions, but some of the so I'd like to change on slightly. Thinking about the conflict which is going on in Europe at the moment between Russia and Ukraine, and how it's created a divide across the world. India is part of the BRIC countries. I think I'm right in saying there's several new countries joined that collaboration earlier this year, so something like Ethiopia and Egypt. What's India's response to things like the embargoes and the placed on Russia by the US and the UK and Western Europe?
Okay. When it comes to India, India didn't take the position of United States or Europe when it comes to sanctions against Russia. Rather, India had a strategic partnership for ammunition deals and everything with Russia, and Russia is one of the largest suppliers of defense matters to Russia, as well as for oil. There was an oil embargo on countries that deal with Russia for the rest of the world. But the major powers, the big powers, couldn't do much. So now in that way, when there is a war and when there is a requirement to neutralize a war, where when it comes to Ukraine, the eastern part of Ukraine is more on Russia. The Russians are going to have it even on the negotiation table. Donetsk, Kherson, all those eastern line, they will definitely have. Rest of Ukraine will be negotiated and a fence will be done in this final deal of the peace between where Russia is not participating, India is participating. So India brings a major economic component, diplomatic component, and also Russia and Ukraine are the biggest wheat suppliers in that region. So world needs Ukraine, world needs Russia, world needs to solve this. How to solve it is to demarcate the line near Donetsk and make eastern part of Ukraine a separate entity, where that will be the final negotiation between I told last time when Dr. Hall was giving that Iran will have a problem in 1.5 years. Already the Iranian president had a crash and the situation is becoming jittery. I told when you were giving the speech here, you were asking about Iran, right? So I told that. So this is not that I'm against a state or anything, that's the way things are happening. Not that I'm doing anything, or not some CIA is coming and telling, but when you look, this is how it goes. Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, I think, yeah, Diana, you want, yeah, thank you for, is it done? Yeah, you want to, yeah.
I think a very important thing you never mentioned here is the nuclear power of India, Pakistan, and even China. How the military might are influencing the Indian Ocean as well as the
I have an answer to that. Pakistan has 32 submarines, nuclear power submarines with, India has 82, right? And also Pakistan has Gwadar port and several ports there. If India fights, if Pakistan fights, or if they launch the first nuclear strike towards India, Pakistan will be finished. So military-wise, I don't think a nation state that has been there for 75 years in a responsible manner in the United Nations will ever use nuclear weapons. But to balance that, there are military weapons. And also, India has the new Patriot system given by Russia, SU, I can't remember the version. Yeah, SU1. So with that, it's not easy for even for China to strike India. So the space age in India is quite advanced. Yeah. Yeah, man.
I saw PJ online had a question.
Yeah, I can't. It's not.
The one response which I want to give regarding this mention of Russia is that, but still, what I find is the gas that's coming to Europe, they are heavily relying on Russia still. So the Western countries are still relying on Russia. But why don't they allow the other sources of let's say oil from Iran or Israel to coming to the market? That's one comment which I wanted to make. But the question to Dr. Srimal is, you mentioned about Article 370. Would you know how this Article 370 was amended? It was through the president.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah,
which is a question towards
certain things are not 100. Yeah, you're correct. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. You want to know something about oil or something?
No. It was about Article 370. So if you're not familiar with it, it's okay. Let's we can leave it.
That's good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mrs.
Okay, so it's very following on from the previous one, not media one, because it's quite big for saying. But I know India planned to have a military base on assumption it didn't work out. But how many other military bases does India have in the region where they have successfully established or have sort of ongoing plans to establish military bases? Because I'm really fascinated by everything you did. It's very ambitious, sort of the historical side, the cultural, the economic side. If we just focus on the militaristic side, and this is a question about nuclear power is very important. But then, we know a lot of wars are related sort of on the ground, and obviously in the aerial drone technology, all kinds of India is very advanced in sort of high-tech warfare as well. So where in our region, Indian Ocean region, have India established military bases?
If I'm, to my knowledge, I think it's in Djibouti, not yet. And Gwadar port, it's on a commercial basis, not on a military basis. And in Maldives, very recently, it's not military, it was for disaster and surveillance purposes. The air drones and planes were used, and now it's not there. But India can operate, they have many frigates and submarines, plus the Vikrant aircraft carrier that moves in the Indian Ocean. And with BrahMos missiles reaching 6,000 kilometers range in any of these countries, it has a super capacity to even operate without a military presence in a country, especially the naval as well as aerospace power. Yeah, that's how I know. But in future, I think if they start building the Gwadar port in, not Gwadar, Iran. In Iran, what's that called? Sure, you correct me. Okay, right. If I'm wrong, you correct me. Then, so in Iran, there's a deal that is a strategic place where it can encircle Pakistan, and from top they can, if they put a base in Tajikistan or something in Afghanistan, Pakistan will be in difficult defense composure.
Obviously, they were looking at assumption, but they changed their mind.
They're going only mainly because when it comes to Seychelles, Mauritius is there. Mauritius is more of Indian diaspora and all those things. They're quite safe.
Military presence in Mauritius?
Not military presence. It's in a proxy. I mean, you say third party operation. And when it comes to, the only concern is Maldives. So they are, that's the defense part, how to cut off the point, because it's a choke point.
Isn't Maldives frequented by China? China has had a very...
But it's very far away from China, no? Yes. To come China, to send across Sri Lanka and send it to, very difficult.
But I believe that Chinese political presence has been quite actively in the Maldives.
But to my knowledge, I go to Maldives a lot, I have a lot of contacts. It's politics. Yeah, it's a 50%. This current government won with 50%. Next term, once again, a pro-Indian government will come. Now, yesterday, President Mewsu went for the swearing-in ceremony. So the diplomatic traction is once again on track. So from this way they will take, from the other way also they will take it. So it's going to happen that way. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much
Mm-hmm.
to understand how they use the superpower country currency to the neighboring country.
Okay, already the bilateral trade between Sri Lanka and India is $5.5 billion US. And most of the economic cushioning goods like dal, rice, buses, everything comes from India. Like it's about 4 billion in favor. So to pay in, and also dollars are it's a difficult hard currency. It's easy for us to pay in Indian rupees. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka has given authorization to use Indian currency for Sri Lankans in India and Indians in Sri Lanka, because another 1 million tourists from India now, Indians also coming, for them to use Indian currency is easy. So in the new 21st century, economic diplomacy all are influenced by your nearest neighbor, your closest country. We have been influenced, and it's better to have a neutral stand and progress our country to a better economic position. Yeah, that will be more wise for the moment. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, BRIC currency has now, when it comes to BRICS is made out of South Africa, that's in the global south, Russia and all. So all these are, like if you put together all these 4 countries, including India, it's about half of world's currency. So I think in years to come, it's going to be BRICS currency. In another 10 years' time, we'll have to use that. Yeah.
Question online from Mars Dodgeman.
Mars Dodgeman, okay.
Yeah. Sort of going back to what I was asking before, really, I was just going to say bye and thank you so much for an interesting insight into the role of India. But a lot of what you've been talking about has been about Indian power military power, economic power, etc., etc. Would you say that India has got new sort of almost expansive imperial ambitions in the region? I mean, you just mentioned the Maldives as a problem because they're not pro-India, that various nations such as Mauritius become sort of more or less a proxy nation of India, etc. How do you look at India's ambitions as a sort of world imperial?
India's soft power is Bollywood, right? You know,
yeah, but I'm not talking about that.
Hollywood,
I'm talking about
nuclear.
Nuclear warheads was one of the topics that you mentioned, the number of nuclear warheads and military bases in the Indian Ocean. To me, that didn't really sound like Bollywood. It sounded like a military expansion ambition.
No, you asking about military or about imperial soft power, right? So I just
both in a way,
soft power agenda. Yeah. So after Hollywood, the most popular film industry is Bollywood, and you go even in the most interior island in the Maldives. I have seen Hollywood pictures. And even if you go in Dubai or any other place in these places, you see Hollywood. So it has influenced a lot. So, I mean, the cultural soft power, whether it's from North India or South India or East, all those things come in one pot to the world in a different way. So that brings the diaspora and all these things. Yeah, it's also a good part. It's called cultural soft power. That's why they don't have to have military bases. It's already taken over. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully.
Okay. Interesting to hear it from your perspective. I really got to dash off to the next higher seminar, but thank you so much for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming, attending, and I think that's it.